There is a national team that is changing African football forever, and perhaps in the process is literally splitting it in two. On one side is Morocco, a national team that in the space of a few years has gone from being a great story in the World Cup to becoming a real powerhouse. A team that no longer takes the field to resist, to defend itself, or to hope for the perfect evening, but takes the field to lead. On the other side is the rest of the continent. Historic national teams, huge countries, generations full of talent but often still stuck in the same old problems. Unstable federations, fragile structures, undervalued local league Marimokis, projects that change every time they are eliminated from any competition, burned out coaches Marimokis, players scattered between Europe, the Gulf of Africa, and youth categories without a clear path, MAF. And so the title of this video is deliberately provocative, is Morocco destroying African football. Now in reality, it is doing the exact opposite. It is showing the way, and to understand this, we have to start from a specific night, June 29, 2026, Monterrey, Mexico, World Cup round of 16. On one side, the Netherlands, Van Dijk, Dijk, De Jong, Dunfra. One of the most important national teams in the history of football, the country of total football, the country of Cruz, Van Basten, Robin, Snyder. A national team that even when it doesn't win is always among the favorites. On the other side, there is Morocco, and this is the first thing to understand, because Morocco is no longer on the other side, because for years, when an African national team faced a great European team in the World Cup, the narrative was always the same. Physicality, heart, enthusiasm, sacrifice, maybe a surprise, maybe a heroic match. Morocco changed the language of football. Against Holland, they did not act like a small, resisting side. Instead, they took the ball, pushed the Dutch deep, forced them to defend, and compelled them to play a style of match that from a cultural perspective does not belong to the Netherlands Badlands. Sure, if Morocco had beaten Holland on the counterattack, they would have done their part, but when you beat them by taking possession away, you are humiliating them on their own symbolic territory. The match ends 1-1. Gakpo scores in the 72nd minute. Morocco equalizes in the 91st minute. Issa Diop scores from a cross by Talbi. Then it goes to penalties, and the ghost that European football already knows returns, Yassine Bono. Bono, the goalkeeper who in 2022 had eliminated Spain from the World Cup. The goalkeeper who, when you arrive at the penalty spot, doesn't look at you like a normal goalkeeper. He studies you, waits for you, but knows all of you. He makes you feel it isn't you taking the shot, it's him saving it. Morocco wins those penalties 3-2. Bari scores the decisive one. The Dutch come out, and Morocco moves on. But the most important thing is not the result, it's what sticks with you after the match. It's the continuation of a trend. In 2022, Morocco knocked out Belgium, then went on to eliminate Spain, and finally they eliminated Portugal. It became the first African and Arab national team to reach the semi-finals of a World Cup in history. And the world was already thinking, yes, it's great, but it's unrepeatable. In reality, it had no idea what Morocco was about to do. That wasn't a fabulous generation because 4 years later, Morocco was still there, drawing with Brazil, eliminating Holland, returning to the quarterfinals, and giving a frightening scare to the strongest national team in the competition, France. The same France that 4 years ago had interrupted Morocco's dream in the semi-finals. This is no longer a miracle, it's continuity. And so this is where the question in the video arises. How did Morocco become like this? Why did Morocco do it, and why didn't Cameroon? Why did an African country manage to build a modern, deep, and organized machine while many other African national teams continue to live off of very strong but intermittent generations? To best answer this question, we would have to dismantle a lie. The lie is this: Morocco became strong because it took footballers who grew up in Europe. It is part of the truth, but it is not the actual truth. Yes, Morocco has done an extraordinary job on the diaspora. For those who may not know, the term diaspora refers to the forced dispersion of a people who are compelled to abandon their native homeland to settle across various parts of the world. And Morocco has adopted this in football. Hakimi was born in Spain, Mazra in the Netherlands, Amrabat too, as well as Ziyech, Brahim Díaz from Spain. Saibari grew up playing football in Europe, and we could go on and on and on. Morocco understood before many others that the diaspora is not a plan B. It is not about taking the rejects from the European national teams. It is part of today's football identity because today, modern football no longer follows the classic boundaries. A boy can grow up in Amsterdam, grow up in Belgium, speak French, play in Germany, have Moroccan parents, and yet feel himself to be profoundly Moroccan in his heart. Morocco did not perceive this complexity as a problem. Instead, the country transformed it into a genuine and concrete strategy. It created an emotional, technical, and political bond with its children scattered throughout Europe. It made those youngsters understand that choosing Morocco did not mean giving up on the highest level, but joining a serious project, the Naka. And this is the turning point, because to convince a player who has two strong passports, it is not enough to tell him come because you have Moroccan origins. You have to show him that he is not choosing only with his heart, he's choosing a competitive, organized national team, a credible staff and environment that can lead him to play in the quarterfinals, semi-finals, perhaps even the World Cup finals, This is the point that is often overlooked. The diaspora did not create the Moroccan project. It was attracted by the Moroccan project. If you have strong players abroad, you can create a good national team for 2-3 years. But if you have facilities, a youth sector, scouting, academies, a local championship, and a federation that works, then you can create a real powerhouse. And this is what Morocco has done. The symbol of all this is located in Saleh, near Rabat. It is called Academy Mohammed VI. It was founded between 2009 and 2010, when Moroccan football was not yet what it was. In fact, Morocco, to be honest, was coming out of extremely difficult years. It was far from the World Cup. It did not have the weight it has today. It was certainly not perceived as a world football powerhouse, and there a decision was made that, looking back at it today, seems almost prophetic. To build a modern academy, not just any sports center, something very similar to the French Clairefontaine, an elite football facility, pitches, guest quarters, school, medical center, swimming pools, classrooms, daily life, discipline, training, education, identity, identity. The idea is simple but very powerful. Take Moroccan talent at its roots and place it in a European-level environment without uprooting it from Morocco. Don't wait for Europe to train the players. Start training them yourself at home. And in fact, players who become very important for the national team come through that academy. Ounahi, El Nasiri. But even more than the individual names, the message you send is important. Morocco no longer wants to be a country that simply exports talent. It wants to be a country that produces talent, organizes it, supports it, transforms it, and protects it. First and foremost. In here, we see the first big difference with other African national teams. Africa has always had talent. The problem has never been talent. The problem is what happens to talent. You lose it at 12, you lose it at 15, you lose it because maybe you don't have a decent pitch to train it on, because you don't have a school, because maybe the family can't afford to support it financially, maybe you lose it because the wrong agent takes it away too early, or because the federation doesn't support it. You also lose it because maybe at 18 it finds itself faced with a very simple decision. A very organized European federation or an African national team full of chaos, who would choose the latter? Morocco has attempted to provide an answer to this question with a structure. Then there is the second piece, which is investment. Morocco has not left football to the spontaneity that we often see in the African Cup of Nations, but as a national priority. There are stadiums, federal centers, fields, academies, training of coaches, organization of competitions, and international candidacies. Football has become a showcase, but also a political, economic, and cultural tool. In 2030, for example, Morocco will co-organize the World Cup with Spain and Portugal, and this in itself is an incredible sign. Morocco is not only thinking about the 2026 team, it is thinking about 2030. About being the face of Africa at the World Cup, about presenting itself not as an exotic guest, but as a footballing powerhouse, perhaps as a favorite. Today, Morocco no longer considers its national status as a stroke of luck, but rather as the direct result of careful planning. The senior national team is just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath it, there is an entire movement that is winning everywhere. Morocco's under-20 team won the 2025 World Cup, beating Argentina in the final. Argentina is the country that has historically made youth talent its trademark more than any other. Morocco won 2-0. The under-23 national team won the Olympic bronze medal in Paris 2024, defeating Egypt 6-0 in the third-place playoff. The under-17 team won the African Cup of Nations in its category. The local team dominated the CHN, which is the competition exclusively reserved for those footballers who currently play in the various African leagues. The women's national team reached the continental finals, went to the World Cup, topped the group stage in 2023, and has become a symbol, even outside of men's football. This is the central point of the video. Morocco does not just have a strong team, it has created an ecosystem. Today, Morocco does not depend on Hakimi, Bono, Amrabat, or Ziyech, because there's always someone ready to take over from them. And then there's an under-20 who wins. A kid from the local league who only can be called up a National B player, who looks at the project and thinks, oh, I can win there too. Duet too. There's a coach who is trained to work with young people, we'll come back to that. And a federation that knows exactly where it wants to go, the direction to take. And here perhaps comes the most provocative point. Why does Morocco risk destroying African football in the title? Because it risks becoming living proof of the backwardness of others, but not because it's bad for Africa, but because it's raising the standard in an absurd way. Today, Morocco tells you that talent is not enough, passion is not enough, having players in the Premier League is not enough, or a golden generation is not enough. You need a federation, then a plan, structures, you need a plan. Of course, you need to have a serious relationship with the diaspora, a credible local league, and everything else, youth football, women's football. And above all, it takes time. Morocco wasn't built overnight. The starting point is not 2022, but much earlier. In 2009, Morocco chose to invest. The results were visible 15 years later. This, for example, is the exact opposite of typical African football, which is constantly experienced as a permanent emergency. Coaches change, there are complicated training camps, unpaid bonuses, federal caste, divided groups, talents often left alone, and projects cancelled after just one defeat. Morocco is clearly not perfect. It is not a paradise. It has had controversies, pressures, controversial finals, coaches who disagreed, and difficult moments. But it has always had a direction, and perhaps the case of the coach is perfect to explain what I am telling you. Mohammed Regragui, he is the coach of Morocco in 2022. He arrives just before the World Cup, restores order, creates a compact unit, and gives the team a strong identity. That Morocco is a fierce, compact, defensive, supportive team. It does not give up the field or space. It does not concede anything at all. It suffers, but it knows how to suffer, and when it starts again, it always hurts. That Morocco eliminated Spain and Portugal, making Europe feel completely uncomfortable. The world begins to learn about Morocco, and that is when Mohammed Wabi, who is the current head coach, comes into the picture. He is a coach with a very particular background, having grown up working with young people, a successful protagonist of the under-20s, promoted in a very delicate situation. And the most interesting thing is that he does not try at all to copy 2022. He does not try at all to copy Regragui. He does not say, we reached the semifinals defending the bases, let's defend low. No, he tries to Morocco a step further. UAB's career is unusual. The Anderlecht youth team, the Anderlecht under-21 squad, assistant at Anderlecht, and then the Anderlecht youth coach once again. Then Morocco under-20, under-23, and finally in 2026, the ACT promotion. He has never played, but his Morocco seems to have always been known. Morocco presses, has a higher line, has more possession, has more courage. Bari plays as a false nine, one plays closer to the goal. Brahim Díaz is the creative center of the group. Hakimi is increasingly involved in maneuver, and not just as a fullback who runs and crosses. Bouhaddi is part of the project. Telbi Lainau, Hakimi, new pieces that widen the depth of the squad. This national team is trying to evolve while winning games. Morocco chooses not to die within its own winning formula, but instead attempts a deep transformation. And if you are enjoying the transformation of my YouTube channel, it is time to subscribe to the channel and leave a like because you're helping me. And leave a like because you are helping me, and because the more we grow, the more these videos will continue to be there. And as I am transforming my channel, Morocco is transforming. It is no longer the fierce outsider. It is becoming a great team. This is a fundamental, very dangerous step. The 2026 World Cup is difficult for Morocco, not because it has to prove itself to be a surprise. It has already done that. It has to prove that it has arrived, that it can be stable. The great, and it is doing so. And here we come to the match with Canada, because the 3-0 may seem like an easy win, but it's not just that. Honestly, Canada starts strong, presses runs, creates problems. Morocco knows how to suffer, loses Bari due to injury. For long stretches, it is not brilliant, and yet in the end it wins 3-0. And this is a characteristic of great teams. They don't only win when they play well, they also win when the game is dirty, and they are good at staying in it. They wait, they change the plan. Una scores twice, Hakimi closes the game, Morocco advances to the quarterfinals, and now there is France. At this point, we come to the question that opened the video. Is this Morocco doing good or bad for Africa? The answer is both. It is doing well for the replicable line. It is showing you that even an African national team can build a modern project. It can invest, it can organize, it can convince the best talent, and it can win at youth level. They can reach the semifinals of a World Cup and can return to the quarterfinals at least 4 years later. More organized. They can organize a World Cup, but at the same time, they create a problem for the others, because now there are no more excuses. Because if Morocco can manage it, why can't Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, the Ivory Coast, or Cameroon accomplish the exact same thing? We're talking about countries with enormous traditions, with gigantic players with very strong histories, and yet often incapable of transforming talent into continuity. Senegal, for example, won the Africa Cup of Nations, on the pitch produced champions, and built a good structure. And yet they often show themselves to be incapable of transforming talent into continuity. But they have not yet had the global impact that Morocco has. As Nigeria has an absurd amount of talent. Just think that in front of Victor Osimhen, but every cycle seems to be accompanied by the same feeling they could do much, much more. This year they didn't even qualify for the World Cup, for example, just like Cameroon. Ghana has gone from being an African powerhouse to being an unstable national team. They didn't qualify for the last Africa Cup of Nations. Cameroon, as I was telling you, thrives on upheavals. The Ivory country had a golden generation, then it had to rebuild. Now it has managed to do so a bit, but we are still at the limit. Legitetto has a strong league, huge clubs, a football culture, and even Momo Salah, Marmou, but the national team never manages to have the weight it should. What does Morocco do today? It holds everyone up to the mirror. And the mirror tells you one simple thing: it is not enough to have the players. You need players, you need a country that pushes you from a footballing point of view, that accompanies talent from childhood to the national team. Not one that only remembers young people when they win a tournament, or that treats the national championship as secondary, not one that leaves women's football on the sidelines, or that perhaps changes projects every 3 or 6 months. Yes, every 3 or 6 months. The winning project, even in Africa, is one that speaks to its children in the diaspora without making them feel like guests, that does not wait for a divine miracle but prepares it. Morocco is dangerous for African football because it forces everyone to grow. And this hurts because it makes you realize that you are behind. Very, very behind. You have to build pitches. Take away the power of improvisation. You have to really invest. Train your coaches and accept that you can't win on the pitch with the nostalgia of having had Samuel Eto'o. Means creating a plan that won't give you results in 4 years, maybe in 15. Morocco has been patient. It planted seeds when no one was watching, and now it's reaping while everyone else is watching and wondering, how is this possible? But it didn't happen all of a sudden. Maybe all of a sudden the semi-final arrived. All of a sudden the world noticed. All of a sudden the records arrived. The newspaper covers the matches against Brazil, Holland or France, but underneath there were years of work. And now Morocco finds itself at a crossroads because reaching the top is very difficult. But stopping us is much worse. The history of football is full of national teams that seemed ready and then disappeared. I remember a European championship from Iceland, another from Hungary. But look at Belgium and Croatia. The former had a golden generation and they didn't win anything. Croatia performed miracles, but they struggled with every cycle. Portugal just finished the Cristiano Ronaldo era. I talked about it in a video. Now they'll have to figure out what comes next, but with Ronaldo they never won the World Cup. Germany, after years of being the absolute model, has lost all its certainties. Brazil hasn't won a World Cup for about 25 years. No one is safe, not even Morocco, imagine that. And yet, the risk today is that the expectations become too high, that from now on, every tournament will be experienced as if it were an obligation, and that the country will no longer accept a defeat, even if it were against France. Because when you are Morocco in 2022, everyone applauds you. When you're Morocco in 2026, everyone is even more surprised. When Morocco becomes the host country for the 2030 tournament, you could perhaps even be considered the favorite for the final victory. But if there is an African national team that can win the World Cup, perhaps it is Morocco. Because it has all the talent, facilities, diaspora youth sector, results, competitive clubs, growing youth football and identity, and a World Cup to organize. This title is provocative, but it is not by chance. Morocco risks destroying African football forever. It is not because it is damaging it, but because it is destroying the old idea of African football that we were used to seeing, specifically that of improvisation, constant surprise, and pure talent. And other countries are already learning something. The Democratic Republic of the Congo has compelled England to endure suffering and live in a state of fear. Argentina only managed to eliminate Cape Verde in extra time and then had to complete a comeback against Egypt after falling behind 0-2 early on. Colombia only won 1-0 against Ghana. Costa d'Ivoire and South Africa qualified for the knockout round and made things difficult for their respective opponents. African football has carried so many nations to the next round, and the idea now is to follow Morocco, which tells you that Africa must no longer be the continent of mere potential, but one that is defined by a concrete and lasting project. So, this is the revolution, a revolution that can do two things. Either pull the entirety of African football upwards, or else create a Morocco that risks turning into something like the dimension of New Zealand within Oceania. And so this is where the future will be decided, because if Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, South Africa look at Morocco and say we must copy its seriousness, not just envy its results, then African football may truly enter its finest era. But if the rest of the continent continues to rely on talent without structure, on pride devoid of planning, and on generations lacking continuity, then yes, Morocco genuinely risks cannibalizing everything because it is running ahead, while all the others are simply walking because it is running it. Today, Morocco is this: an African national team that has stopped asking for permission, that has stopped watching European and South American teams dominate, that no longer wants to be the beautiful story of the World Cup or the romantic symbol of a night. It wants to become a power. And it is doing so. In fact, I'll tell you, maybe it already is. Now France is coming. Then if all goes well, a semi-final, then who knows, maybe a final or maybe not. But whatever happens from here on, one thing is clear. Morocco is not the future of African football. It is the present, and perhaps of world football. The rest of Africa today must decide whether to follow it or remain inexorably and forever behind.